The 2026 NBA Draft Early Entrant Withdrawal Deadline is merely just a couple of hours away, but a lot of key decisions for this class have already been made. We're going to break all those down now. Next, let's rock. We are live here on the No Ceilings NBA Draft Show, here on the No Ceilings NBA YouTube channel. We're also on your podcast player of choice. I'm Stephen Gillespie for a special episode that we're going to be doing here tonight, covering the 2026 Early Entrant Withdrawal Deadline. Like I said earlier, that's merely just a few hours away. And listen, this idea was just to be completely honest with you, this idea was kind of spur of the moment. That's why we didn't really promote this a lot on shows. But I wanted to hang out with my friends, especially today, because I mean, guys, let's face it, a lot of interesting decisions for the upcoming 2026 NBA draft is they've already taken place. This class is shaping up to be incredibly interesting. We know the names at the top of the draft that are going to be there, right? But the whole purpose of this withdrawal deadline and the whole early entrant process is to allow players who might not be so certain of where they rank in terms of their standings with NBA front offices. So what the whole purpose of this is to allow players to get feedback, their agencies to receive feedback, weigh all the data that they are able to get, and hopefully make an informed decision as to whether or not they want to stay in the NBA draft or go back to college. And it's just such an interesting time. And I just want to preface the show by saying this right off the rip. Just because we don't get any reporting today does not mean that decisions haven't been made. This happened with the early entrant deadline as well, in terms of players who say, all right, I want to go and test the waters while maintaining eligibility, things like that. There were names that were on that list that weren't publicly announced. I'm expecting the same thing to happen tonight. We may not get reporting on names like Tunde Yesefu, Tyler Tanner, and names like that. We might, and hopefully here on the show as we're live, it would be fun to just kind of give my immediate reactions to those as well. But there's just a lot of decision making taking place. And some decisions that were made today, a couple days ago, a couple weeks ago, we're going to be breaking down some key ones here in the class. And before I do that, Norin Rad in the chat says, let's rock. The Antoine Willis in the chat says, yo, what's up, Steven? How was your day? Antoine, fantastic day. Good day at work. The kids, the wife, who is a teacher, they're all on summer break. It's fun coming home from lunch and there being a house full of people again. It hasn't been like this in our house in quite a while. My oldest is at summer camp too, so dad life is in full swing. We'll see how that works for the rest of the week. But it's been a good day, man. I hope you've had a good day as well, Antoine. Then Juza in the chat says Ibuka is Lotto and better than Fleming. I don't disagree. That's not a popular opinion though. I do have both Ibuka and Flemings in the lottery, but I do have Ibuka one spot ahead. So I don't necessarily disagree with you, Juza, but I also don't want that to sound like I'm just completely disregarded Flemings. Jay Gyro in the chat says 3 hours away. Yeah, that being the deadline. Koa is officially in the draft, it seems. Yeah, a lot of interesting decisions that are taking place already have happened. And like I said, we have a few that are going to shape up the class that we don't have any reporting on. Hopefully we get that soon. But shout out to everybody in the chat. Really thank y'all for helping us get to 25,000 subs on YouTube. That is fantastic. I'm going to let's go ahead and just dive into the show. So I want to cover, obviously, those prospects that are staying in the draft that are kind of tweener-ish, whether or not we were sure they were going to stay or go, stuff like that. Again, we're not going to talk about, Wagler, Acuff, anything like that. We're going to be talking about some of these French guys. The first one that I want to discuss is Alan Graves, who officially declared that he was going to stay in the draft. If you're watching us live on YouTube, again, thank you. If you're listening maybe the next day or anything like that, Alan Graves was confirmed by Jonathan Givony on May 26th that he was going to be staying in the draft. Now, his decision is interesting because it's complicated, I guess is the best way to put it, because listen, several months ago, and I want to give a major shout out to Finn Vandergriff of the Double Bonus podcast, who friend of the show, has been on a show with me, been on a show with Corey, very analytic, tilted scout, but does watch a lot of film as well, breaks down analytics in a way that's like comprehensible, which is very hard to come across within this scouting community, it feels like. But Finn actually interviewed Alan Graves from Santa Clara, the forward, redshirt freshman, former Louisiana Gatorade Player of the Year, outstanding season from him. Finn interviewed him, and in that episode that took place, I want to say this was like around the January timeframe. This is a while back ago, several months ago. Alan had said that he's going to declare and stay in the draft. Now, we know with how early he made that announcement that a lot of things could change, even his mind. And we were kind of here at No Ceiling saying, hey, this is brilliant because he's kind of forcing NBA front offices to scout him more seriously, to take a more concerted, conscientious look at him as an NBA draft prospect. And he never throughout the season said anything to make anyone feel like he would or would not stay in the draft after, again, announcing that he fully intended to stay in. But the actions that he took non-verbally suggested that he might return to college basketball if he doesn't get the feedback that he was desiring. What I mean by that is that he entered the transfer portal prior to going in to the early entrant process. That doesn't necessarily mean anything. Again, Cedric Coward did that last year. Transfer portal, committed to Duke in the transfer portal, this, that, and the third. He's now a Memphis Grizzly. So just because you do those things doesn't suggest that you're going to necessarily return. But when you look at how a player is being ranked consensusly, again, just looking at him like as a scout myself, I felt like there was a possibility that he could return. The fact that he announced it the day before the deadline, I like that. I think it's actually not a bad decision because he is a redshirt freshman, meaning he's sophomore age. And it's kind of a weird spot to where, like, if you don't feel like you can go back to school and be at the exact same spot, you're in a weird position to where, sure, you could go to college and get a bag, but if you don't feel like you're going to be able to maintain that spot, if not improve, then you're a year older. For whatever reason, NBA teams don't want to draft juniors. And you're kind of putting yourself in a spot where you're going to be an older senior. Yes, you're making college money, but are you going to be able to do those things? And look at this, guys. I love the chat. Tyler Tanner is officially staying in college. Pulled himself out of the draft. I don't know how I have notifications on. And Koa Pete is staying in the draft. Wow. Okay. None of my notifications are working for whatever reason on X. But Koa Pete staying in the draft and Tyler Tanner being back. Incredible stuff. That's why I wanted to go live, to give my live reaction to those things. We'll touch on Alan Graves here in a second. Tyler Tanner. So I'm seeing a lot of people, like Juza in the chat says, Tyler was so good, man. Why? I kind of agree with you. I even messaged this in our group chat earlier today based on the names that have already announced that they were going to be returning to college. It feels like, oh, here we go. John Rothstein, right on my timeline now. Tyler Tanner is returning to Vanderbilt next season and will withdraw from the 2026 NBA draft. All right, so I have it on my timeline now. I get to look at it. But Tanner returning kind of doesn't make sense to me because is he sure that it's kind of the same thing I was just breaking down with Alan Graves? Is Tyler Tanner sure that he's going to be able to be at this same level of production? Is he sure that he's going to improve in the areas that he needs to? And listen, it's not just height. There's some other things that he needs to get better at. But the height is something that he cannot control. He's going to get a bag, but is he going to be at the same level of production? Are teams going to view him any differently with another year of college under his belt? If the NBA is the ultimate goal, then I think he should have stayed because we look at the names that have already withdrawn. I think worst case scenario, he would have been a late first round, early second round draft pick. That's not a bad spot to be in this year's draft. I don't know if this was the right move other than the fact that he's going to get paid. And if he's going to do this as a sophomore, odds are, again, that there's really, he's not going to get taller. So what he can improve in finishing, things like that, maybe get a little bit thicker, maybe a little bit stronger. But I don't know. Him getting older isn't going to help his draft stock, I guess is the best way that I can put it. He's probably going to hurt his draft stock more than it'll help. He can get a lot of NIL money, but I don't think this is going to help his draft stock. I personally not a fan of the decision, but it is what it is. Tyler Tanner returning. Now, Koa Pete staying in the draft is interesting because his reformed shooting mechanics are not anything that are doing him any favors within his draft stock this cycle. But there's a certain range within this draft to where if you're not at the tippy, let's say top 10, if you're not in the top 10, maybe top 12 of this year's draft, and you're a forward, there's not a lot of wings and forwards. And we're going to cover why. There's not a lot of wings and forwards within this year's draft. Koa Pete has a lot of things going for him other than the shooting, obviously. Good rebounder, good positional playmaker, has a handle, can be active on the defensive end as well. High usage, very, very productive at Arizona as a freshman. Him staying in, I think, is going to be beneficial because he's going to be able to come in and physically handle the NBA. And physicality is something that I think is adequately discussed within draft circles. However, I think people kind of sleep on it in terms of comparing physically ready and mature prospects to prospects with potential. Like here, for example, I'm seeing Nada Mint in the chat a couple of times. Nada Mint is pretty hypothetical right now. He's a 3-and-D prospect that didn't defend particularly well, didn't shoot the three particularly well, drew a lot of comparisons to Hall of Fame level talent, was projected to be a top 4 talent, doesn't have the handle, not super flexible, not lean, pretty lean. There's a lot of hypothetical things with him to where, sure, if everything hits, he could be awesome. However, it's all hypothetical right now. We haven't seen him do very much. Koa Pete can at least come in and hold up on a NBA court. Winning prospect in high school, able to handle NBA demand, is going to rebound. Rebounding is one of the things that typically translates to the NBA in terms of success. All successful NBA players, I'll say 80% just to lowball it. 80% of all successful NBA players were good rebounders in school. Koa Pete's a good rebounder. He's got a good handle. He's got good feel. Needs to work on the shot. Okay. That's really where we're at. I'm seeing reports here from Dirty Dancer saying Milan Momcilovic staying in school. Man, this is popping. There's a lot of stuff happening. I'm glad I chose to go live at 9. I don't see that in my notifications, but I don't believe that Jeff Borzello is reporting. Let me adjust my notifications here real quick to where Jeff Borzello from ESPN will come up. But breaking forward, Iowa State forward Milan Momcilovic is withdrawing from the NBA draft and returning to college. His agents, Excel Basketball and Pete Thamel, told me and Pete Thamel, Momcilovic, the best shooter in the country, is the number one player in the transfer portal and remains uncommitted. And of course, there are a number of schools that are looking to get his services, namely Kentucky, St. John's, Louisville, and Arizona, as reported by On3. So, Milan Momcilovic making the decision. We're just going to roll with the guys as the announcements come in, okay? Milan Momcilovic, as described here in this post, best shooting prospect within the class. I was listening to Sam Vecini of Game Theory on either his show. He's been on a bunch of podcasts, by the way. He might have been on, it might have been the KOC guest spot that he did. It might have been on Rosillo. I can't remember. So if this gets to Sam, forgive me. But it was reported that Iowa State wasn't like cheaply poor with Momcilovic, but comparatively to what he could have drawn on the open market, he played at a discount this past season. So him hunting a blue blood like a Kentucky, St. John's, Louisville, Arizona, he's going to get paid. And that number could be somewhere in like the $4 to $7 million range. Who knows, right? Like, I'm not reporting any figures here, but he's going to get paid the most he's ever been paid by going back to school. If he is the level of shooter that he was at Iowa State, then that's going to help his draft stock, even if the defense doesn't improve, even if he isn't like a crazy rebounder or does anything more offensively outside of shooting other than like connective playmaking. So him being able to go back, make a lot of money, does make sense. He wasn't projected like as a hands down consensus top 30 prospect. If he's going to be a second rounder this year, he could be a second rounder next year with more visibility. If he can shoot, it's going to be hard to top what he did this year, but if he can shoot at a good clip next season, which I don't know why he wouldn't, then he's going to still probably get drafted within the same range and make a lot of money at school this year. And I'm looking in the chat, Juice in the chat said I had Milan going 29. Listen, back half of the first round, sure, okay, like I'm not going to argue with that. Like, if you had him as a late first, early second, especially in light like of all these announcements rolling in, yeah, I wouldn't argue that. I mean, shooting is, if you can shoot, you can get a foot in the door at any NBA team, whether you're drafted or not, right? Like, look at the playoffs. Sam Merle, you could be a second round pick and be in log starting minutes. You know, Duncan Robinson, a lot of prospects like that, right? So he could be a second rounder next year. He could be a late first next year, but make $4 to $7 million, maybe more. Who knows? But yeah, interesting choice. Koa Pete staying in. Again, I want to touch on that because freshman forward who drew a lot of comparisons accolades wise. I'm not sitting here and saying talent wise. I want to preface this. I want to make this clear. Koa Pete accolades and winning wise was right up there with Cam Boozer coming into the season. Played at Arizona, deep team, can't shoot, hasn't shot, might be able to shoot if you think he could shoot at some point, good on you. He hasn't shown anything to suggest that he can. In this year's class, as a freshman forward, with the pedigree that he had coming in, with the rebounding that he has, the playmaking and passing for his position that he has, the defensive tools that he has, I think it was smart for him to stay in here because, again, at a certain point, there's not going to be a lot of other prospects at his position that NBA teams are going to be able to choose from. Yes, this class is deep at guard, but how many of the ones that are desirable are going to be taken within the top 20 to top 23? Then you get to the back half of the first round. That's where you start getting a little bit into like the big men within this year's class. But all the top ones are probably going lottery this year. And then you kind of run into pick your favorite flavor of big man towards the back end. Wings and forwards. There might not be very many of those at a range where you can get Koa Pete, who has shown to be a very talented player. He could just be one of those guys. It could be Peyton Watson from UCLA, guys. Like, there could be an outcome where the college production, for whatever reason, is just not indicative of the type of NBA player that he could be. So there are things to suggest that could be true. He could be Jaime Jaquez because positional playmaking, size, strength. Jaime Jaquez might not be the guy that you're looking to draft in 2026, but I believe he was selected at like pick 18. Like, you could do a lot worse than a Koa Pete at pick 18. So there's that. All right, guys, I'm going to keep running through my list of players that I wanted to talk about today. Any breaking news happens that I don't see that you do, please continue to drop that in the chat. This has been a lot of fun. Actually, yep, I'm trying to watch here in our Slack chat too to see if the guys are posting anything. So a lot of good conversations going on that. Back to the Allen Graves discussion. Him staying in the draft, again, like how I said for Tyler Tanner, a lot of questions with his game athletically, I think, come in. But him staying in at a certain point within the first round of this year's draft, you're not going to be able to find a freshman forward who can space the floor reliably like Allen Graves, who can rebound reliably like Allen Graves, even though you could be down on his defense, but the defensive disruption metrics are as high up there as anybody within this draft. Those are desirable traits. An NBA team could be talked into Allen Graves. And Norman in the chat says, "Yep, a redshirt freshman." He is. I mentioned that earlier. Didn't mention that last moment. My bad for not being consistent. But yes, you're not going to be able to find, let's even say a sophomore forward who can shoot threes at his size, who can rebound, and at least thinks the game well defensively. I'm not as high on him as a defensive stopper at the next level. There are mobility questions, but again, at a certain range within the first round this year, you're going to have to kind of pick a player at some point that gives you a chance to be something. No, he didn't start for his college team this year. I understand the concerns with that. There's not really a huge track record for not starting and being successful. I'm not saying that hasn't happened. There's not a long-standing track record of it. So there are reasons to be concerned. But again, at the back end of the first round, you're not going to be able to find a sophomore shooting four-man who can rebound and post defensive playmaking metrics like that. And guess what? He can improve conditioning. He can improve athleticism by working on his body at the next level. Those are things that maybe NBA teams could talk themselves into being a risk that you can mitigate. Okay. Dirty Dancer in chat says maybe a Rui Hachimura. Sure. Maybe something like that. So, good connective skills as well as a big man. So good things to like. I like the decision for him to stay in. Let's go back to May 19th. This was confirmed by Joe Tipton and others. All right, but I saw this from Joe Tipton myself. Morez Johnson Jr. Said that he was going to stay in the draft. This might seem like a no kidding thing now. At the time, it wasn't necessarily something that felt like a no-brainer. Morez Johnson Jr. probably didn't get the same level of acclaim throughout the season as, obviously, National Player of the Year, Yaxel Lindenberg, who also has like one of the best stories out of anybody who's being drafted this year. You know, didn't really do well at high school basketball due to academics and stuff like that. Took the JUCO route, played at UAB for a couple seasons, transfers to Michigan, and the success of Michigan was not guaranteed. Revisionist history might suggest otherwise, but slapping Yaxel Lindenberg, who played the 4 and the 5 at UAB, on a team with Morez Johnson, who played the 4 and the 5 at Illinois, on a team with Ade Mara, who is a gigantic 5, wasn't a home run, clear cut. You're going to win a national championship, Dusty May, sort of a roster construction as what it ultimately ended out being. Morez Johnson being able to take the toughest front court assignments defensively, the mobility that he shows, he can mirror footwork of the person that he's defending at a high level. Fantastic rebounder. Anything that you could want from a defensive front court player, you're getting that from Morez Johnson. And I love the fact that he measured in at 6'9" barefoot. So now you're looking at a guy in sneakers who's going to be 6'10", upwards of maybe 6'11", depending on the shoes he wears, I suppose. But someone who's real big man size, who can do all of these things. And I'm not drafting him for his shooting ability, but I'm looking to see if there's some shooting there for him long term. Like maybe he can, like at the absolute like low end, maybe he could do some of the things that we're watching Oklahoma City's Arkansas prospect Jalen Williams do against San Antonio. Jalen Williams from Arkansas, not the sexiest prospect coming in out of his respective draft class, but someone who's defensively versatile, someone who can space the floor and shoot, someone who rebounds his tail off and defends his tail off. You could look at Morez Johnson Jr. and see him being able to do a lot of those same things. Excuse me, I'm just going to check my notifications real quick. All right, nothing new in terms of decisions. That's fine. The other person that I want to discuss that ended up staying, and I'm looking in the chat, any word on Malik? I think he's staying in, but haven't heard much. There's been some things that I'm not going to break here that I've heard. Mum is the word right now, unfortunately for me. The decision may shock people that on Malik, but we'll see. I have him ranked fairly high. I think that especially now with some of the names that are withdrawing, like I think that I would pick him top 25 easily. There's a case for maybe even top 20, but you never know. I mean, some of these decisions are kind of hard to predict. I mean, just because I like him high doesn't mean that NBA teams do. I mean, we see that every year. But another name who we know that is in this draft, and then we're asking also in the chat, excuse me guys, like this is very much I'm reacting to y'all and trying to work down a line as well. But Jeremy Fears Jr., I haven't seen anything on Jeremy Fears, Tunde Yosefu, any of those guys. But yesterday on the 26th, Christian Anderson confirmed that he was going to be staying in the draft. This one was not a foregone conclusion. This was probably going to be one of the tougher decisions to be made, to be honest, because look, Christian Anderson, one of the best shooters within this draft class, very stellar passer, playmaker for Texas Tech. Like that team took down some giants, some Goliaths throughout the regular season, even without JT Toppin, and a lot of it had to do with the heroics of Christian Anderson Jr., the sophomore guard out of Texas Tech. Him staying in was not a foregone conclusion because of how deep this guard class truly is. I mean, if you look at the top with guys like Michael Brown Jr., Darius Acuff Jr., Keaton Wagler, Kingston Flemings, Abuko Okori rising up in the ranks, LeBaron Philon, Bennett Sturts, several guard prospects that you could look in, say like Christian Anderson's going to have to compete with those guys. Fantastic shooter, measures well in terms of height and length. The weight you want to see be a little bit better. Kind of personally, I kind of worry about him holding up physically in the NBA, and maybe some teams do too. But him staying in suggests that at least one team really likes him. And there are a number of teams that could use his services, especially as a floor spacer. So him staying in is pretty interesting. Um, again, because of the depth of this class. I don't know how high he's gonna go though. That's the thing. Like I personally don't have him ranked super duper high. Like he's gonna be in my first round now, probably at the back end of the first half. Again, just I worry about him physically, but there's shooting prospects always get a foot in the door. If you can shoot, you will at least get a cup of coffee, probably a couple, if you can shoot the way that he does. He can also play make and handle the ball incredibly well. I want to see him develop a little bit more physically, but again, NBA teams might find that as something that they can easily kind of shore up a little bit. So Christian Anderson in. So guys, I'm gonna hit a quick break. Y'all could continue obviously to converse with one another, like how you guys are doing. This has just been awesome to be kind of an audience of one, watching you all converse and ask each other questions. But I'm gonna hit a quick break for podcast purposes. Then on the other side, we'll touch on some of the prospects who recently announced that they are going to be returning to the college ranks, and of course, we'll react to some of the news that comes out as it does. So hang tight on the other side of this break. I'll be right back. All right, we are back here live on the No Ceilings NBA Draft Show on the No Ceilings NBA YouTube channel, where you all have helped us to get over 25,000 subscribers. If we got you here right now for this live show, please hit that subscribe button so you can be notified of any time that we go live to talk about something, because even we don't always know when we're going live, as evidenced by this episode. So if we got you here, hit the subscribe button, hit that like button. We still got some milestones we can hit before draft night. So if y'all could help us continue to do that, I appreciate it. But we're here live on the YouTube channel. If you're listening on the podcast, we love you all the same. Hit us with a like, subscribe, and all that fun stuff there. And then consider joining us when we go live for Draft Sickos on Sunday evening. We're actually going to be having Tyler Metcalf on. Break a little bit of news here for the No Ceilings family. Jam and I will have Tyler Metcalf on to talk about a lot of different draft things. So Sunday evening, 8 p.m. Eastern, come back and hang out with us. We're going to have a good episode. But all right, listen, I'm looking here. I don't see any news that's broke. I want to know, I want to see who's staying in, who's going, and report that to you guys reward you guys for hanging out with me here. And I keep looking. Koa Pete staying in the draft. I love it. I think that that's going to kind of force consensus to do some reconsidering in terms of where he's ranking. Maybe he's falling a little too much. Maybe the combine has really hurt him a little bit. But man, he's a really good prospect. Probably going to be a better pro than a college player. I genuinely feel that way. But all right, we're back here reacting to the news that we do know instead of waiting for the news that we don't. Returning to school. You guys knew that I was going to talk about this guy. You guys knew that I was going to talk about my guy, Billy Richmond III, the Arkansas swingman who, listen, this is a win-win for me, but his decision that was reported by John Rothstein, having his notifications on your timeline was quite an experience for a couple of minutes, where he reported that Billy Richmond III was going to be staying in the draft, and then quickly said that there was a change of course, as reported by his WME representation, that he is going to be returning to Arkansas. And then I think I saw, it might have been Jeff Goodman, saying that it was never really him going to be staying in the draft. From what I could gather, it looked like a a misannouncement. Maybe it could have been a communication issue, a misunderstanding um, of him ever saying that he was going to be in the draft. Essentially, look, as a Razorback fan, with the class that we have, especially like the wings and forwards that we're gonna have. Okay, sure, yeah, I'll take me some Billy Richmond again next season. Yeah, like as a college fan, as a Razorback fan, Woo Pig Sooie, I'm all about it. As someone who had him as a first rounder prior to this news breaking, as someone who mocked him to Philadelphia at our 3.0 mock draft, just because, look, I'm watching the playoffs just like everybody else. I'm looking at some of the guys who are difference makers in the playoffs just like everyone else. And you can't watch Billy Richmond play basketball and tell me that he can't be a contributor to a winning team. Like, help extend possessions by his offensive reboundings, poke outs, diving for loose balls, setting screens, things of that nature. You can't tell me that he can't be a contributor to a playoff team like that. Is he shooting? Did he shoot the ball well? No. But again, you can contribute in the NBA as long as you're doing pretty much everything else at a high level. And Billy Richmond can defend. You can make an argument that he was the best perimeter defender in this class. You can make an argument that he is like one of the most like fun to watch, just absolute like devil may care, throw your body to the wind, throw caution to the wind. Just go out there and play hard. Like Billy does that. Rebounds, can drive and attack. I think that some of the stuff that we saw him do this year just screams winning basketball to a contender. Him going back to school, I don't think indicates that he got poor feedback. I think that he probably had there's people in the league that love Billy Richmond. Maybe he looked at himself higher. Maybe the feedback was if you shoot, you could potentially be drafted at X range. All kinds of things happen in these conversations at the combine when these NBA teams, like, do they care about the measurements, the matchups and things like that? Yeah, to a little bit of a degree, but you really want intel. Like, teams want to converse with these players, and players want to talk to the teams too, right? They want to know who they could potentially be playing for. They want to know what they can do to get better. Something tells me that Billy Richmond got feedback to like, hey, look, you could get drafted in the first round in this range, right? And even if you're a second rounder, you probably get guaranteed money. But if you improve as a shooter, then you could go significantly higher. I think that that's on the table. I was a little bit shocked by it. I thought that the Billy stock was trending upward, and maybe it did to a certain degree, but I thought it was trending upward enough to where he was going to be a first round guy. And listen, returning to school after a good season does not always indicate that you're going to do better the following season. How many times have we seen that? We could name 1,000 prospects right now who great season, go back to school, their production goes down due to whatever reason. And if I'm being real with Billy, like the team that he's going to this upcoming year, loaded at the guard, at the wing and forward position. Like Billy, now he's going to a Couch Calipari team, and Coach Cal always tends to reward guys who come back. But it's not a slam dunk that Billy's going to improve next season, which hurts to say as a Razorback guy, but like as someone who, being real, I don't know. I just feel like he gained momentum to be drafted higher. Little shocked by the decision to return. Probably shouldn't have been, but it is what it is. All right. Next guy that I want to talk about, who I'm less shocked by, but I did have him ranked pretty high on my board. I had him actually 23rd. Omari Allen. It was confirmed today, the 27th, by John Rothstein, that Omari Allen would be returning back to school. Now, I think the big thing, there's probably two things that worked against Omari. One, at the combine, he didn't measure as tall as advertised. Okay, Like, he is not this 6'7", 6'8", towering four-man who could play, make, rebound, defend. And the shot just never really was consistent this year. You could come up with reasons as to why that happened. You can look at certain points of the season and say his shooting was great here, but the shooting wasn't there. The height wasn't what we all thought that it was going to be. I didn't watch Amari Allen play basketball live, so I can't give you like that in-depth feel for like how I did with Darius Acuff Jr. when I watched him play live. And there were so many conversations of like, is this dude even 6 foot? I saw him play live and I'm like, yes, and then some. Like, Darius Acuff Jr. is not, a dwarf out there. I kind of feel like Amari Allen plays bigger. And if you look at the combine stuff too, like the athletic testing, he was awesome in the max vert. And I think, that leaping ability, that strength, helps him to play bigger, right? And you could make the case that, that he could end up working out in the NBA despite being 6'5" or 6'6" instead of being like true tall wing forward size in the NBA. But him going back, it kind of hurts because I had, like I said, I had him 23rd on my board. I think I saw, Lakers fan Amari Allen news was really bad. Dirty Dancer said Amari was the only one staying in college that gutted me. Yeah, like I get it. There's WC Ashine 1741. I don't know. Maybe he's looking at someone else. I don't know. But yeah, Amari Allen, a lot of fans, a lot of people within the draft community that liked him as well. Him staying in, little bit of a blow to my big board, but didn't really surprise me. All right, so we're still waiting for more news to come out. There's a couple of big name prospects, big-ish name prospects that we're still trying to figure out what they want to do. And again, I want to remind everybody that just because we do not get a report by midnight tonight on social media does not mean that a decision hasn't been made. There's probably going to be a couple people. There are probably going to be a few people who make a quiet decision and just don't want to announce it publicly for a myriad of reasons, right? So please keep that in mind. But I'm trying to recycle my feed to see if there's anybody who is making a decision live that we can break down together as a family here. Looking for Tunde Yosefu. His name is all over my timeline right now in terms of people who still have a decision to be made. Let's talk about Matt Abel, who that was confirmed yesterday, the 26th. If you're watching live, Matt Abel confirmed to be going back to school, going to North Carolina. This one might. I wasn't blown away by this decision, but there were some things trending in Matt Abel's direction to suggest that depending on if he would have been comfortable with a certain range, NBA teams were interested, okay? The problem with Abel is that, look, I had him as a kind of like late 30s, early 40s range. And in today's basketball landscape, like we saw it at the early entry deadline. We saw guys who could have been drafted in the first round this year. Here's looking at you, Thomas, out. Didn't even mess with going in and testing the waters, like went straight back to college because, wants to run it back, wants to win another ring for Florida. Obviously, the NIL money was going to be ridiculous for someone like him to go back to school. But even for these second rounders, especially for a team like North Carolina, who looking to put together a roster with brand new head coach Michael Malone, with some of the transfers that they got in as well, North Carolina obviously not shy for money. Matt Abel going back isn't all that surprising, but it's just interesting too because gained a lot of steam within the draft community as the deadline was approaching. A couple of days before Matt Abel made his decision, Malachi Moreno on the 24th announced that he was going to be returning, and that was such a big win for Kentucky, who desperately needed one, as some of you guys said in our previous podcast that we did. Might have been this past Sunday. But yeah, Malachi Moreno, another one who, not the most shocking news that we got that he was going to be going back, but another guy who some things suggesting that there were some teams in the first round that really liked him. Now, I still have some work to do as to determine like how deep next year's big man class is going to be. Okay, but outside of the lottery sort of talents, and I'm talking about guys like Ade Mara, Marez Johnson Jr., Jaden Quaintance, like outside of those guys, there it really is pick your favorite flavor of big man. You know, there's names like Henry Vasar that people really like, Terrace Reed Jr. that people really like. Malachi Moreno, for all of his warts, played in a system this year. Like Kentucky was an absolute mess. I don't think that you can lay that at the feet of Malachi Moreno. But some of the things that he does well, that he even showed that he could do well in his freshman season, translate to the NBA. Defensively, stuff translates. Rebounding, stuff translates. Positional playmaking, stuff translates. Needs to show more offensive versatility, which maybe he's going to be looking to do that returning to Kentucky this year. But teams are interested in Malachi Moreno. Obviously, there's a disconnect as to where teams are comfortable, where he desired. Maybe there's just the pay scale difference between the NIL bag at Kentucky waiting for him to go back and wherever teams are saying, hey, we would love to take you here. A lot of different things that could be weighing into that decision. Malachi Moreno opts to goes back to Kentucky. Good decision by him. Looking in the chat, is there a chance that Quaintance fall? Big chance. Injury concerns are real. I haven't seen anything. The only medical stuff that I've seen be announced publicly is the Michael Brown Jr. one, which is fantastic. That, you know, the back injury stuff kind of behind him. He's looking to get into pre-workouts and stuff like that. I know that NBA teams have already had him in their facilities and stuff like that. I haven't heard anything from JQ. I know that there was the film of him running and dunking and landing on one foot that circulated the internet that leave people a little bit questionable. Again, nothing front-facing, nothing publicly made for his injury. Let's talk about a couple more returners while we're waiting here to see if anything else happens while we're live here on the show. This has been a lot of fun, guys. I hope that you guys are enjoying this episode. This was just a bright idea that kind of had last minute coming into the night. So really enjoying spending time with you guys. There's no NBA basketball on tonight. There's not really a lot vying for attention right now. We can just hang out and talk basketball. Anything that you got in the chat, just continue to throw it in there like you have been. Having a lot of fun. May 25th, reported by Joe Tipton that Flory Bionga is going to be going back to school. Now, for those who may not know, he spent his year at Kansas this year, entered the transfer portal, committed to go play for Louisville. Not since he's entered in combine season and stuff like that, Flory, I haven't heard or seen anything that indicate that he trended one way or the other relative to what the production from him that we saw this season, which is interesting, right? Because typically you'll hear something in some direction. You'll see a report in something in some direction, right? Flory, I'm not shocked because Louisville is going to give him a bag. Louisville spent a lot of money on their team last season, bringing in obviously Michael Brown Jr., but other prospects coming in, Ryan Conwell, Isaac McNeely, players like that, you know, just coming in. Flory coming in with Jackson Shelstad, the Oregon point guard, who transferred in alongside Flory. I'm interested to see how that team looks, because this last Louisville team, even with someone like Michael Brown Jr., was uh, not what we were hoping to see. But Flory showed enough to where I had him in a early second round range. But again, glut of big men prior to the decisions being made that you could really pick from. If you wanted a rim running, rebounding big man, Flory Bidunga checks a lot of boxes. Like if you're looking for someone who could set screens, hard roll to the basket, even make some passes out of the short roll, Flory Bidunga does that. Protects the rim. He just does big man things well. He's not the biggest big man in this class, but he can do a lot of the big man thing well. Him going back really wasn't all that earth shattering. I saw Ruben Chinyelu's name mentioned a couple times. Tommy Murray in the chat. Brazil Popular. Yeah, very next on my list. He was confirmed on May 21st by John Rothstein that he was going to be going back to school. I wasn't shocked by this one in the slightest, to be honest with you, just because there's a lot of holes to Ruben's game. Does he have a supreme skill? Sure. Like, he's one of the better rebounding prospects within this class. And you heard me say just a moment ago that I value physicality, that rebounding is one of the most translatable skills into the NBA, that if you look, like 80% of the league were great rebounders for their position in school. However, if rebounding is really like your only special thing that you do, it's really hard for an NBA team to invest significant draft capital in you, right? Ruben's hands aren't the best of the big men that he was compared to within this class. Mobility really isn't there. The decision-making stuff with him, like, big men are asked to do so many things. Anybody who listens to me regularly has heard me bring up, look, people don't think of Steven Adams as like a playmaking big man, but Steven Adams makes great decisions in DHO settings, right? He can even put the ball on the ground a couple times and make a decision. I didn't see enough of or much of that at all from Ruben Chinyelu. Defensively, I don't know how mobility wise, like I worry about his translation. I think he's exclusively in a drop, which kind of limits him in terms of NBA schemes and usage and role, to be quite frank. Like, I had him as a second round talent in this year's draft. If he stayed in, he would benefit greatly from going back to school. And I think Micah Hand-Lockton is the only big man that is not going to be returning. So maybe he gets even more minutes and maybe he can showcase a little bit more offensive versatility. But Alex Condon has already announced that he's going back. I just mentioned earlier that Thomas Howe is going to be returning as well. There's still going to be kind of like a big man by committee thing going on with Chinyelu. And if he does the exact same thing this year as he did this previous season, then he's made the right decision, in my opinion, by going back to school and making a few $1,000,000 and potentially helping Florida win another national championship. Question in the chat from Hoop Rewind 123 said, thoughts on Donovan Dent retiring? I had him I was expecting him to, with the withdrawal deadline, I'd have to go back and look at my board. Like, I easily would have drafted him in the second round this year. Like, easily. I think he's got a fantastic handle. He's a very strong guard, even though he's a little bit short. Does pretty much everything but shoot. Now, that's a big bugaboo in the NBA if you're going to be a smaller guard that can't shoot. But at a certain point, how aggressive he is, how athletic and strong and talented he is, like, I would invest some draft capital on him this year had he not retired from basketball. But I understand, right? Like, it's his decision, so I'm not going to sit here and say that he did the wrong thing by any means. He's getting a head start on what he might have ended up doing after basketball. And who knows, like, with the lack of a shot, maybe he's in the league a couple seasons. Maybe he goes plays overseas for a couple seasons. But not everybody wants to do that. Not everybody who isn't going to make the NBA wants to relocate to another country, learn a whole new different style of living, just to end up having to make a decision on what they want to do afterwards anyway. I he I could commend him. Like, I could sit here and congratulate him and give him all the flowers in the world, all the respect in the world for him doing what he feels is the right decision. If whatever he wants to do anyway was going to be inevitability, him doing it earlier in his life, I good on him. Not everybody has the realistic outlook on life to be able to make a decision like that. And then I'm seeing a lot of Mick Cronin comments in the chat. I'll let y'all handle that. I'm not going to touch that. Last guy that I have on my outline, as I am looking at my Twitter feed now, my X feed, whatever you want to call it, looking to see any more decisions. Like, it's almost 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern time right now. They have roughly an hour and 59 minutes left to make a decision. Again, that's publicly. These guys that haven't announced yet, here's looking at you, Malik Thomas, Jeremy Fears, Tunde Yusufu, a few of the guys that I'm watching, looking for your names. They don't have to announce this publicly, guys. Like, there's nothing that says that you got to call Jeff Rothstein or hit him up in a DM and say, here's what I'm going to do. Nothing says you have to do that. You just have to inform the NBA. So we'll look and see if anything comes of this. But yeah, I'm looking in the chat. Norton Rad says Jeremy yet. Still nothing, guys. I'm looking and waiting just like you. On our No Ceilings feed at No Ceilings NBA, the guys posted the gift. Well, we're waiting. Like, we are waiting. Oh gosh, yeah. And I'm seeing Dirty Dancer in the chat say I think I would take Tunde over Malik. I hear that argument. I have them ranked very, very close together. And maybe push come to shove, like if I'm an NBA team, maybe I do the same thing. But I do have Malik ranked higher on my board. I just think the offensive fit for him is a little bit easier. But, we'll see. We'll see. Yeah, the last guy in the chat, or excuse me, on the outline here that I have chat, is actually we'll hit another break and go over a couple of notable returners that I'm not going to dive deep into. The last guy in the second segment that we're still in that I want to kind of discuss here is Andrei Stojakovic, confirmed today by John Rothstein that he's going to be going back to Illinois. And I think Illinois has like almost their entire team back. Like, they have so many guys back. The Ivisic brothers, Mirkovic is going to be back. Now, Andrei Stojakovic is going to be back. Him going back makes sense because, listen, the offense on him is still pretty rough, guys. Like, he's a good hustle guy, good rebounder. He'll scrap defensively. He's smart. He can make connective reads, but unlike his dad, he just doesn't shoot. He can do a little bit of bully stuff and a little bit of like mid-post action stuff, but he's not self-creating or anything like that. So I understand him making this decision to return because like Illinois has a big chance to win an NCAA championship next season. They're big, they're older. They already have a lot of built-in chemistry. Coach Underwood is on an absolute heater right now. Maybe they find another Keaton Wagler that they can hand the ball over to that sets this team up for the future. We'll look to see. And just real quick, I want to share something. Our No Ceilings NBA account retweeted this thing from Bobby Marks that said NIL versus draft. And he says picks 20 through 30 are $29 to $4 million. That's the NIL. Second round picks are $1.3 million, and two-way are about, a little over $6,500. So a lot of things to consider for these guys, which is why not everybody's rushing to make the decision longer than they have to until they get all the data in front of them get the people in their lives, their trusted circle, to help make these decisions, right? But again, Andrei Stojakovic confirmed today that he's going to be going back. Illinois is going to be a wagon. There's some things to like about him for sure. It makes sense for him to go back. He was going to be a second round pick by all accounts. I haven't heard of anything about him being a first round name. That doesn't mean that he wouldn't have been or anything like that. Yeah, and then shout out to Norton Rat in the chat. Says, by the way, No Ceilings Draft Simulator is good. Should go check it out if you haven't. Needs help on the trade friendliness, though. Good feedback. Appreciate you mentioning that. So what we're going to do here, guys, is we got a couple of other names that I want to mention. We don't got to do anything in depth. But again, unless you want to ask questions while you're in the chat, I'm all for it. We're going to hit another break for the podcast feed real quick, and then we'll be back for some other notable returners. So hang tight. We'll be right back. All right, we are live here on the No Ceilings NBA Draft Show on a Wednesday evening, getting ready for the early withdrawal deadline to take place. Now, again, I want to preface this because just because announcements aren't made publicly doesn't mean that they aren't sent into the NBA. So if we go through the whole night and we don't hear anything about Tunde Yosefu, Malik Thomas, players like that, that doesn't mean that obviously a decision has been made. It just hasn't been made publicly, and that's okay. We see that on these deadlines all the time, no matter how much it drives us nuts. But we are back here on the No Ceilings NBA Draft Show on our YouTube channel. Man, the chat has been live tonight. I appreciate everybody rolling in and having some discussion with me. The chat is growing as we keep doing this. So everybody who's here, thank you so much for hanging out. If you have not subscribed to No Ceilings NBA, hit that subscribe button, turn on the notifications. You never know when we're going to go live to talk about something. So subscribe while you're here, hit that like button while you're here. If you're on your podcast player, do all those things too. And the reason why this is important because it lets us go to the combine, it lets us go to pre-workouts and all these things and take all the information that we get from those and give it to you over at NoCeilingsNBA.com and do those things. Cassius Winston in the chat. Is this? I'm just going to say that it is. Cassius asks, what do you think Fears is going to do? I'm not sure. I haven't heard a lot trending in the direction that he's getting a ton of first round love. I think that he could get a lot of money going back to school. I think that he could go to a place where he's already familiar with the system, do a lot of great things, maybe even make some improvements. However, it's hard to say because there are a lot of younger guards in this class, even in the second round range if they want to stay in. There are a lot of guards in this class that you could select from. Not to say that Fears can't be good or anything like that, but there's more kind of patience with the younger prospects, as everyone knows. Like anyone who follows drafts knows that NBA teams will typically value the youth over the older guys, right? So he's the name that I'm just personally not reporting anything. Just my gut check feeling would be that he returns, but we'll see. I mean, he's got a little less than 2 hours to make that decision. So Cassius Winston, appreciate you asking that question, man. Appreciate you. Here's what I want to do, as I just got done thanking everyone for hanging out with me here. Again, chat, you've been incredible. This last segment that I want to do while we're still waiting for news to flow in is to just go over some other notable returners. John Blackwell is the other one, and Cassius Winston says, "Thank you, boss." Yeah, man, anytime. Appreciate you. John Blackwell also announced his return. Now, his is interesting because, listen, I like John Blackwell coming into this season. He had a lot of good, kind of preseason workouts. I heard a lot of really good things on him and how he was preparing for the season and stuff like that. Came in super duper high, had a first round grade on John Blackwell. Ended up being in the second round range for me. So him returning makes sense, especially when he entered the transfer portal and is going to Duke. Jay Gyro in the chat says Duke is going to be very guard heavy. They're going to be very everything heavy. Like, I'm curious to see who gets playing time, how much, things like that. It's good. Duke is going to be crazy deep and almost too deep. But I would imagine that wherever John Blackwell committed to play, he's going to get significant playing time. Going to Duke, it's going to be interesting to see how the coaching staff handles this season, because it's going to look very different than the past couple of years where they had a Cooper Flag to kind of build the team around, followed by Cameron Boozer to build a team around. And Dirty Dancer right on cue says, no idea who the go-to guy is there, though. That's the thing. It's kind of like forgive me for probably a better phraseology here, but it's almost like a spray and pray, sort of mentality here with Duke, where maybe on any given night it could be anybody. But they certainly have a lot of people, John Blackwell being one of them. A couple other names here that I want to touch on. These are not like the biggest names. They're not even like surprising names. But Aiden Tobiasen, who is going to be playing at Syracuse this year, very fun name. I think a lot of people are going to have him ranked very highly for the 2027 NBA draft because he's a guard that can handle, who can shoot. He's listed at really good size, talented in a lot of different areas of the floor. Syracuse is not what everybody is, they're not this is not your grandpa, your great uncle, whoever. This is not the Syracuse of old, right? But bringing in guys like Aiden Tobiasen kind of gives them a little bit of suspended hope at the absolute worst that they could return to relevance. And Aiden Tobiasen is such a fun prospect. A lot of interesting things said about him during combine season. Like, this is a name to keep out for 2027. So him returning, almost a foregone conclusion, but I'm interested to see how he applies feedback that he got during the whole early entrant phase. Similar to the next guy that we'll talk about, Caden Lewis, who is, I believe, going to Miami. Someone can back me up in the chat. Miami is going to be a lot of fun next season. But Caden Lewis, another freshman guard in a season that just seemed to be ruled by freshman guards. Another guy who's going back. Love the concept of him going in, getting the feedback that he needs to get a little bit better and improve. And then the other guy is Anton Bonk, who very low major guy who is transferring to Michigan State. Very interesting big man. Very interesting. Has some perimeter game to him, has some rim protection and rebounding to him. We'll see where he lies on the transfer up scale in terms of if this is a home run hit for the Spartans or not. This could be a guy that's playing with Jeremy Fears Jr. next year. We'll find that out here in a couple hours too, hopefully. But Bonk is a guy to monitor for next season for sure. Then Dirty Dancer says, what did you think of Luigi's decision? I might have missed this, Dirty Dancer. I don't know if this was something that happened today. But the last I saw was he would need to be guaranteed a top 20 pick to stay in. I haven't seen him announce that he's withdrawing, but I know that there's a college in play for him, so I haven't seen that. And just for anybody who's curious, I've seen it in the chat a couple times, and I'm sorry that I haven't addressed it, but there's some international names that they have a little bit later. June 13th is the actual withdrawal deadline for people who are not in the early entrant window. So that's it. Historically speaking, that applies to international prospects, right? So they get a little bit longer. So if you're worried about guys like Jack Kyle, who announced that he's going to be staying in this draft, even though he had previously said that he was going to go to Gonzaga, he has until June 13th. Is for all I know, Luigi still has that time frame to make the decision. And Dirty Dancer right on cue says Villanova. That's who I thought. I just didn't want to speak incorrectly. Swigo going to Villanova would be that's an interesting fit for sure for different reasons. I mean, Villanova is not the team that they used to be either. So anyone who's curious about the international guys who are still playing international ball or were playing international ball, they have a little bit longer to make a decision. They don't get the same sort of, or they don't have the same level of restriction as the early entrant guys do. So, and Dirty Dancer in the chat, big time athlete is Jack Kyle. He is a really good athlete. There's a lot of questions as to like how refined of a point guard that he's going to be. But sometimes, like if you want to project in the second round, priority undrafted guy, those are typically the type of dudes that you want to get. But folks, I'm hitting refresh. I'm looking to see if there's anybody else who's made it. Oh, right on cue, John Rothstein. Jeremy Fears Jr. is withdrawing from the 2026 NBA Draft and will return to Michigan State next season per his agent, Mike Miller. Will be an All-American entering the 2026-27 season. Fears had second-round options, but opted to return to East Lansing. Yeah, so right in line from what I was saying. People in the chat were like, "No kidding, he's going to be a second-round guy." I try to be a little bit more friendly with prospects. We like to be positive here at No Ceilings, for the most part. But yeah, so if you're still hanging with this, Cassius, that's the decision. As sort of anticipated, Jeremy Fears Jr. withdrawing, make him some money at Michigan State. He's going to be playing. Apparently we keep it wrong. Okay. Appreciate the feedback. We'll try to be more correct. But yeah, Jeremy Fears is going to be playing, it looks like, with Anton Bonk. So that's going to be an interesting pick and roll tandem. So right on cue, John Rothstein with a hit. Jeremy Fears Jr. Is opting to stay in. Guys, I'm going to take some questions here. We'll keep this thing rolling. We'll stall for a little bit. I got a little bit more time in me. We haven't even hit our normal Draft Sicko hour and a half minimum show here. So if you have questions, if you're watching on YouTube, ask them. I see a couple of y'all are watching on X. Would really love for you guys to go over to YouTube, look up No Ceilings NBA, follow us on there, subscribe, and all that fun stuff. Like that would be super duper cool. But we appreciate the support all the same. So Josue Gonzalez in the chat says, Steven, do these last minute workouts really make an impact to see if they go or stay? I would say, Josue, that there's no like cookie cutter one size fits all answer to here. I will say all it takes is for one team to fall in love with a prospect, and sometimes for a team to fall in love, all it takes is one really, really awesome workout. I mean, it happens, right? Like all you have to do is get in front of a decision maker, look awesome for a workout, look awesome in competition with other prospects. You got to consider too that a lot of these guys are traveling like day over day over day. I was listening to Derek Fisher get interviewed during the combine, and he said that his worst workout was with the Los Angeles Lakers, and that was the team that ended up drafting him, and he was surprised by that, right? But it's to answer your question, Josue, like in a very boring way, it depends. I would say it can. Like it certainly helps. Like last minute workouts can help a player, right? Like if they get in front of somebody and they're saying, hey, that we're drafting at the spot. We really like you. Wink, wink. We promise type thing. Yeah, it could impact the decision. Howie R. Bears in the chat ask if I will comment on his 7 comps. I'm sorry that I've missed this a couple times that you had it there, Howie. I'll try to hit these real quick. Darren Peterson, Devin Booker, I could see that. I would also just say with some defensive juice to him as well. AJ Debanza, Adrian Dantley, I actually kind of really love that. Especially, I love his stylistic comp. I like the frame. I think that AJ has more on-ball juice, but I mean Dantley played in yesteryear, so it's kind of hard to say what he would look like in today's NBA. Acuff with Dame and D Rose instincts. I would say that both of those guys athletically are so different from Acuff, but I do see the Dame like 3-point shooting, handling. There's probably a little bit of CJ McCollum in there as well in terms of like the craft, the change of pace, like how he wins with intelligence as well. Cameron Carr, the third Thompson twin, and the best because of threes. As good as an athlete as Carr is, he's not a Thompson twin level athlete. I'll say that. Probably actually the thinnest of all three of those guys. But yeah, he can shoot. He can weak side rim protect, and he was supposed to be this good before committing to Tennessee. Caleb to Siakam, Jonathan Isaac, Tari Eason. I can see that. I could see some of that. And a Boozer with Horford and Zach Randolph. I love the Zebo love that we're getting this year with Boozer. I love that. And then Wagler with Tyler Hero and Austin Reeves. That's a pretty interesting blend of prospects there. Howie R Bears. Those are some very good. Those are some very good comps. I appreciate that. Hoop Dave as in the chat says, are JT Toppin and Ben Henshaw withdrawing or staying in the draft? Could someone answer because I cannot find the information in the moment. As far as I'm tracking, I know for certain that JT Toppin is not going to be in this draft. He still had eligibility. He got injured. I would imagine, that the thought process is that people like him. Another year healthy, another year making NIL can help you. I would need to get back to you on the Ben Henshaw thing, to be completely honest there, Hoop Dave, but I appreciate the question. Bean 2697 asks nothing, but he does say hit that like button, everybody. Yeah, please do. I'd appreciate it. Do I think the Celtics draft a decent player at 27 with all these guys dropping out? Bryson 617. To be honest, I would really need to evaluate my board in light of all the activity that's been taking place. I will say that I think that you can still get a good player at 27, though, just right off the top of my head. You can. I mean, this class like has different tiers and a break of prospects, I would say. But there are prospects who I had in like my 40s and stuff that I still really like. If Boston got an Alex Caravan or a Richie Saunders or someone like that who could come in and immediately fit into that 3-point heavy system that Boston favors so much, like, yeah, you can still get someone who can come in and contribute at 27 for sure. Looking down in the chat, getting some thank you, Stevens. Ashlyn says, I'll settle down now. Hey, I appreciate you, man. It's all love. I love everybody in here, no matter if they giving me positive or negative feedback, whatever the case may be. I just appreciate y'all hanging out. Howie R. Bears says, Sergio De La Rey. Again, international dudes get a little bit longer of a leeway to make decisions. I haven't seen anything on him, though. Thoughts on Tyler Bilodeau and even Tamin Lipsey? Bilodeau is interesting. I think that he's a pretty fun prospect. I'm not as high on him at no ceilings as some of the other guys are, but he's got good size and he can shoot. That's foot in the door level stuff. Tamin Lipsey, he's small, so that certainly hurts. He's not a good shooter. That certainly hurts. Good playmaker. Defensively, I saw him at Portsmouth when I went. I know that he's a good metrics guy. I'll tell you, among talent, even at Portsmouth, he didn't really do anything defensively to stand out there. So if I'm looking to add someone for two-way talent, spend some time in the G and stuff like that, he's a good prospect. Tamara, I hope I'm pronouncing this right. I know you're a fellow Arkansan. Says, thanks, Stephen, for all the info. I won't freak out if I don't hear from Leak publicly, but I hope he returns. Tamara, I think this is a win-win for us, right? We get another pro hog if he goes pro. If he returns, we're even deeper, and I'm okay with that too. So I look at this as a win-win, but I appreciate you hanging out. Going down, how did Sergio just become a first round? I don't know. I'm not sure that he has, but hope that you appreciate that I pulled up the question. Here, what else do we got? after Sturts and Okori tier of point guards, is there any other quality point guards left with Fears and Tanner back? Well, Riley, that depends. I would say on my board, like after Sturts and Okori, like you could look at a Christian Anderson Jr. who we just broke down earlier in this chat. I would say that he's a quality point guard that you could add if you're looking for someone who might be available a little bit later. But again, like depending on how teams feel about certain aspects about these guards, like you can almost like put them in like a boggle little presser and see like a different order could come out, right? There are people who like Christian Anderson over Sturts and Okori, to be quite honest with you. There are people who have LeBaron Philon top 10. There are people who have LeBaron Philon in the 20s. You know, it's just like I was saying with the big men earlier, it is really pick your flavor of point guard prospects. I would say, depending on how you rank people there, Riley, Christian Anderson might be the one other guy that's there. And then I would even throw into like Braden Smith out of Purdue. He is a quality point guard. He's smaller, sort of like that Tyler Tanner prospect that we were mentioning earlier who opted to return to Vanderbilt. But he's very smart. He can operate the pick and roll. He's a very good three-point shooter, very good passer. But because he is on the small end, you're going to look at him potentially as a defensive liability. But he's intelligent. Like he could come in and give you some good minutes off the bench and help you run a second unit. So that's another one. That's another name that I would throw out there. What else do we have going on here? Corey officially in as expected. Did that just happen, Dirty Dancer? I haven't seen anything. I haven't seen anything. So if you could, oh, here we go. Stanford's Obuko Okori. I'm reading this from Jeff Goodman's. Okay, I'm gonna camp out here. But Mike Lou in the chat said you skipped my question. Said, damn, homie, shaking my head. Hit me in the chat again, please. There, Mike Lou. I'm getting a lot of really good questions. The size of this chat, I'm incredibly grateful for. Incredibly grateful for. Just please hit me on there. I'll try. I'm really gonna try to address these comments as they come in, guys. But Obuko Okori opting to stay in is big time, and anyone who's listened to us on the Draft Sicko show over the past couple of weeks, going back to our mock draft 3.0, I drafted him at the 10th spot to the Milwaukee Bucks. And this past Sunday, I talked about Obuko Okori as one of like my biggest risers within this class because I think that he, even though he's going to be kind of like one of these quote unquote smaller guards, even though he's going to be about 6'2" in shoes, he's got great length. He measured incredibly well, over a 6'7" wingspan. So if you're into wingspan, being in the draft, I'm sorry, just real quick, says Ruben staying in college. Yes, Bean, we broke that down earlier. I'm getting a lot of comments from Hoops Rewind in the chat that says, where is Graham EK on your board? Hoops Rewind, numerically, I can't speak to it right now with all the activity that's happened, but I would have him sort of in like that G League two-way sort of a range right now. And then Mike Lou in the chat, do you think Michigan's big man going top 10? Who are the Warriors picking at 11? Adam Mara is top 10 on my board. I like the idea of him going to a place like Atlanta, who could really use another big man who can rebound and kind of give that team a different look. And then who are the Warriors potentially picking at 11? I could see Axel Lenneborg being a real option available to them there. Maybe even Morez Johnson, just to kind of keep the Michigan big man thing going there. But thank you, Mike Lou, for the question. Back to the Obuko Okori comment. I think he's severely underrated among, like, I hate to say this because, like, hey, at No Ceilings, we are part of the consensus, right? But I would say outside of No Ceilings, I think that Obuko Okori is heavily underrated. And I saw Dirty Dancer make these comments too. Mike Lou says, "Hey, appreciate you with the salute. Appreciate you too, man. Thank you so much for the question." But Obuka Okori, Dirty Dancer said in the chat, has the sickest handle in this draft. I think that it's pretty close between like him and Michael Brown. I don't think he's better than Michael Brown, but I would say that he could rival him. And if you look, like only like 18% of his shots were assisted. Now, why that matters to me, and this goes back to, I always reference the 540 podcast segment that I saw with Jeff T, where he was talking with CJ McCollum, and he was talking with CJ about how mid-major guards, he likes when they go pro because they can succeed because they are so used to having defenses like wall them off, and they see these like really front-loaded schemes that are specifically designed to knock them off their game in college. They go to the pros and it's more one-on-one. So the game actually, even though they're going up in like competition, athleticism, things like that, the game is easier almost because they're seeing fewer bodies. And if you look at the Stanford context with Obuka Okori, he still shot roughly 35% from deep this year. I think that touch could be even better. He can operate the pick and roll with the best of them. He can operate out of ice. Like he can create for himself and others with or without the ball. And then his defensive playmaking metrics are awesome. And a lot of that has to do with like the athleticism and the tools and the intelligence that he plays with. I know that there are other guards like LeBaron Philon who get, and I would even say Kingston Flemings for me personally, that people rank above Obuka Okori. I really like him. Like him going pro makes all the sense in the world to me. And the breadcrumbs were kind of telling us this too, because Abuka didn't enter the transfer portal. So his options were either to go pro or return to Stanford. I don't know if Stanford did anything to get better for this year, so we weren't going to see him in an ideal situation to make the improvements that NBA teams were probably going to give him as feedback if he did go back to college. We were probably going to see him in a very similar situation, if not worse. So him going pro tells me that he's betting on himself and that there's probably a good number of NBA teams that believe in him. So I'm very happy for the Obuka Okori announcement that he is going to be going pro. I'll take a few more questions here as we're waiting out a couple more players, guys. Like, I know that everybody wants to talk about Malik Thomas when that news gets dropped. Trust me, Woo Pig Sui myself, I want to talk about Malik Thomas. I want to talk about Tunde Yosefu as well because, look, he came into the season with expectations that he could be a lottery-level talent. At one point, I had him ranked, I think, in my top 10. I had him roughly probably like in that 5 to 7 range on my 1.0, if I'm remembering correctly. Baylor just continues to confound me that they keep getting prospects like this because it feels like they don't do anything to showcase their strengths or anything. They just kind of put them in sink or swim situations and hope for the best. And Tunde was in a situation to where, look, Cameron Carr showed out, but they don't really have like they didn't have a table setting guard. They didn't even have like the Baylor level big man that they are normally accustomed to having. So really rough context for a guy like Tunde to get better. But getting a lot of Philon might have the best handle in here. Norrin Rad, shout out to you being in the chat, says I like Philon. I get a question here from Jason Solo or Jackin Solo. I'm sorry if I'm messing up the pronunciation. I'm from Arkansas. You'll have to forgive me. But he says, do you think Michael Brown makes it to the Hawks at 8? And if both him and Mara are on the board for them, who do you take? This is a fun question. Man, I personally do not think that Michael Brown makes it there to the Hawks at 8 because Look, I think there's a possibility that the Clippers could draft him at 5. Brooklyn is very much in play on the board at 6. And then Sacramento at 7 is very much in play. I think all those teams would value having him there. If him and Mara are on the board, who do I take? I have Michael higher, like, to be frank. I have him, 6th on my board right now. In my opinion, yes, in this class, there is a little bit of a difference between the prospect 6 that I have and prospect 8. I think Mara makes the most sense for need, but I would run to the podium for Michael Brown if I'm the Hawks. I take the better talent without question. But that's a good question. Thank you for putting me on the spot and making me think that through. That was a fun thought exercise. Jay Gyro in the chat says, I think it's just Tunde and Malika that we're waiting on now. Yeah, that's what I'm counting to. And then Hoop Rewind in the chat says 155 people are watching. Not gonna get into it. I have a good track of who's all on through the program that we use across all platforms that are watching. We have a bigger number than that, but yeah, Hoop Rewind, I appreciate you being one of them. You know, I'm having a lot of fun. This was a thrown together episode, and I'm having a lot of fun. Josue Gonzalez in the chat says, Steven, is it also a true thing that teams value the interview and time spent with the prospect more than a private workout or second workout? Do you know of any specific examples of this? Josue, as far as the specific examples, like, I would have to like sit down and get like some dedicated time instead of like trying to multitask with this. But to answer the first question, is it a true thing where I got to read it again? Is it also a true thing where teams value the interview time spent with a prospect more than a private workout, second workout? I don't know if teams would really ever separate those two things, right? Like, I think that they value both of them in tandem, which is why they want to bring them in for both of these specific things. You know, I think obviously the interview and time spent with the prospect is more likely to lead to that latter portion where you're talking about a private workout or a second workout get together. Obviously, you have to get to know the prospect first. So I think that sequentially it makes sense that the interview would be the first check in the box, but I don't know if an NBA team would sit here and tell you that I prefer one more so than the other. So Josue, I'm sorry that I'm not giving you like a super fun answer here, but I don't think that NBA teams would necessarily separate those two things in terms of we like one more than the other. So I hope that's a sufficient enough answer for you, Josue. Jay Gyro in the chat says, are Brooklyn really going to draft another guard, like drafting the last 4 years? This is a great question and something that I think, you know, we've discussed a little bit. I don't know if any of the guards per se that Brooklyn has drafted are stopping me from drafting a potential face of the franchise guy, like a Michael Brown, like a Darius Acuff. I mean, if you look, like, Nolan Traore is a perfectly fine and acceptable like NBA rotational guard. He's not stopping me from drafting a guy who I think could be franchise altering. And if you look at Yegor Joman, like, you could classify him as a guard if you want to. He's more of like a wing forward is how the Nets use him. And I even know that like Danny Wolf gets classified as a guard because he's a playmaking big, but he's not a point guard, right? So Jay, I would say that I would anticipate that they do, to be quite honest with you. Norman Rad in the chat says 6'7". I probably said it. Good on you for pointing that out, man. Appreciate it. Seeing a lot of good questions here in the chat, guys. I hope that you guys are enjoying this. Do you see many, this is from PS9414, do you see many second rounders getting guaranteed deals? There were only 10 last draft. Seems like it's becoming less and less common. Again, without having all the full information right now, with the international withdrawal deadline still ahead of us, and we still have about an hour and a half of this deadline for a couple of big time decisions to be made. 10 last year compared to this year, I'm not sure. I don't know if it's gonna surpass last year. It might draw even. It could be a little less. But to your point, yeah, it seems like it's becoming less and less common. I think that's gonna kind of be the trend, unfortunately, within or fortunately, depending. Like these guys going back to school making millions of dollars. Like I'm sure that they did that, with the best of intentions and very optimistic, right? But maybe I would like. I don't know. I hate to speak so definitively about things that could change, right? Um, yeah, if I had to put money on it to answer your question, PS9414, I would say that the number's probably going to be low, if not probably dead even. Um, okay. 9EE says, how do you think the NBA putting first and second round on different days affect the draft? Do you think that a lot of teams are going to try to trade into the early second round? I mean, we saw it. This is a fantastic question. We saw it last year. I think it adds a lot of suspense. I know a lot of people hated it. Like, I mean, basketball fans, just like people in any community, we only hate two things the way they are and change, right? I love that the draft is on two different days. I think it affects the draft because teams get a chance to kind of like regroup, look at their roster, see if there's any other moves that they can make, and maybe pull a Phoenix and like, hey, we want to get Rasheer Fleming at the top of the draft, right? I think that gives you a lot of power because depending on who's still available at the top of the second round, like the 31st pick might be heavily coveted and you can pull real value either out of keeping that pick and selecting or by making a deal and moving off of that pick. Awesome question. I love that one. BCW1550 in the chat says, who from the second round do you like having a 10-year plus career? I like Richie Saunders, Ryan Conwell. Thank you for mentioning Ryan Conwell. That's a name that I probably should have mentioned a long time ago. Those are honestly like two of the best names that you can have right now. I think if Henri Vesar, for whatever reason, makes it to the early second round, I could see him playing in the league for 10 years. Those two that you have listed, Richie Saunders, and again, shout out to you for dropping in Ryan Conwell. I really like him. Good two-way guard, a little bit undersized off guard, but good defender, good floor spacer too. One thing that we're watching in the NBA playoffs right now, if you could, handle pressure and apply pressure and you can space the floor, you have value in the league. That helps Ryan Conwell. I love that. Brazil Popular in the chat says, Bulls need a shooting guard and a center at 15. If there's no centers available, who would you take to be the second next to Giddey, Phylon, Swain? Oh, next to Giddey, would I pick Phylon, Swain, or Carr? Fantastic question. For the Bulls, I kind of like Carr just because Bulls, I feel like, need that floor spacing. He's toolsy, just like the Bull. Like if you want slap, right, you want that size, length, athleticism, physicality. He's got wing size. He's got fantastic length. Very athletic. Not the most physical guy, but has shown to get stronger in season and doesn't shy away from physicality if that matters to you. So personally, I like Carr because I think that's a cleaner fit. Phylon, just another guy with a ball in his hands. Can he defend the one at the next level? Sure. He's improved as a three-point shooter as well. But I think if you want to complement what the Bulls are doing, you take Carr there. For the Dallas Mavericks, why wouldn't you take Phylon over Burries at 9? Because, again, valuing physicality the way that I do, I worry about that a little bit with LeBaron Phylon. We've seen two different versions of him, and I liken this to kind of like Jalen Tyson last year, right? Where at Cal, Jalen Tyson's shown that he can do a lot more scoring stuff with the ball in his hand at Cal. And when he was at Texas Tech, he showed himself to be a good defender. It's not always as simple as just mashing those two seasons together and you get like a perfectly evenly distributed prospect. Phylon defensively this year took a step back, and he had the ball in his hand a lot. Now, he did show that he can play with another guard, but the physicality stuff with the guard is why I wouldn't personally take Phylon over Burries. Burries is coming in at like close to 6'5" in shoes, 215 pounds, an athletic freak. can defend two, can shoot two, can finish through contact. And I think that he's shown that he can operate well with the ball in his hand as well. So that's why I myself would take Burries over Phylon. Antoine says, I'm back. Do you think Darius would save Brooklyn? I think he would be a start, Antoine. I think he would be a start for sure. Also, the Hawks draft Michael. Should he start day one, like if they let CJ walk? Ooh, great question. If they let CJ walk, yeah, absolutely. If you still get CJ, maybe give him the Dylan Harper treatment that San Antonio is. Dirty Dancer. Who would you guess the last guy is in the green room? That's a fantastic question. The last guy. You know, Dirty Dancer, I know you and I both like Ibuka Okori. Let's do that. Let's have fun. I'm going to say Ibuka Okori is the guy. Any thoughts on Ortega from being 2697? I think he's a fine prospect. I think that he's a good defender. Offensively, I don't know how he scales in the NBA. Undersized, off guard, and that's kind of hard to know what to do with. So those are my thoughts. I wouldn't put it past Ortega to be a serviceable NBA player for a long time, even if it's not in a big role, just like being in the league for a long time. So good questions. Guys, man, I'm scrolling through here. You guys have a lot of great questions. Tyler Nickel for the Rockets at 39 or 53. Sure. I think that, adding a floor spacer like him, you could do a lot worse for yourself. Checking my notifications here, guys. Yep, nothing yet. And again, as you guys continue to see stuff, let me know. Hoops Rewind 123. Not to do with this draft, but who's your biggest draft hit? I would say one I'm most proud of, and this is when I first got started, Hoops Rewind, was Santi Aldama. And the reason I'm proud of this one is because this was before I had like synergy access, before there were a lot of people who I knew in the draft space and can like talk through stuff. The few people who I did know and were nice enough to entertain me and allow me to kind of like spread my wings in the space and like really grow, I asked everybody in the scouting community that I could talk to, like, what do you think of Santi Aldama? What do you think of him? And I got a lot of who, because he played in the Patriot League and wasn't, the draft coverage now, like at a grander scale, is like even as simple as like 4 or 5 years ago, it's way more vast now than it ever has been. Like even, 4 or 5 years ago. And to see Santi Aldama get drafted in the first round after I really liked him in college and asked everybody, and I got a lot of like who from Santi Aldama, seeing him get drafted in the first round. Not only that, but be like a serviceable, like a really solid NBA player. That's probably the one that I'm really proud of. Being in the chat says Osai Sellers. Any thoughts on him? I mean, nothing overtly, nothing that I would gush over. I think he's got fun size and a handle. A pretty inconsistent player. That's pretty much like all I could say in regards to that. Where else could I go down here? Yeah, the OKC getting a top 4 pick stuff is ridiculous. Yeah, I think that the stuff about them trading up, yeah, and then going back up here. Do you see the Lakers trading up and with who? OKC 17 or the Hornets? I don't know. I mean, I guess the Lakers do have future firsts that they can get rid of, and maybe if you look at the state of the Lakers now and like you not having any certainty of what they can look like down the line, I think a team could trade up. I don't know if those two teams, OKC and the Hornets, are the ones that I don't think that either one of those teams are looking to trade back in this draft. If anything, I could see OKC trading up, and the Hornets. If I had to pick one of those two, I would say the Hornets would be the team, maybe to continue to get future draft assets. But I don't know. The Lakers could trade up, though. It depends on who they're willing to add in the trade and how many of those first round picks that they're willing to add. Let's see here. Jets 707 said good call on Santee. He's a good player. I appreciate that, man. And then Antoine Willis in the chat. What could Michael average if he were to start? Give me a ballpark. I'd say 18 to keep it safe. I think somewhere in that 16 to 18 range wouldn't be too outside the realm of possibility. I mean, we saw how nuclear hot he can get from outside the arc. He's a good pick and roll handler. Continue to grow in that body. He's got good size, length. I love the bend, the lean, the athleticism that he has. He's going to be awesome in transition. I mean, you could be looking at someone like a LaMelo Ball-esque type player with Michael Brown, and maybe even a little bit better because I like him defensively too. A lot of different ways that he could end up being as an NBA player, but kind of like him. Here we go. Guys, as far as questions go, I feel like that's about as deep as I want to get. Bean is asking me who's overrated in this class. Man, I don't want to be negative after such a fun show, man. I mean, obviously, it's going to depend on where they get drafted, ultimately, at the end of the day. Thoughts here on Aaron Nkrumah. He's fun, man. Like, if I have anybody that I really need to watch more and to prepare myself for climbing in this draft, it's Aaron. So hard to get a feel for him, like watching him in real time during the season. So he's one of these guys that you got to invest more time in afterwards, like in the postseason, in the draft process, right? I think he's interesting. Good wing, 3-and-D prospect with a little bit of a handle. There's enough there to be intrigued with, though. So Terran 0, good question. And then Teflon 914 said, who are the Raptors taking at 19? Man, that's a good question. I've liked a lot of like Bennett Sturts going to that team, even though that they do have some guards. I know that the position of need, in my opinion, for Toronto would be a big man. I could see Hannes Steinbach being a fun option there as well. The problem is, man, like, unless Luigi Swigo stays in and you're willing to, I don't know if Toronto's ever done this before, wink, wink, taking a high upside Italian big man with perimeter skills. I don't know if that's ever happened in Toronto before and in recent draft history. But if you need a big man and he's in, he could be a fun bet to make there. They're tough, man. It's always tough. I feel like they're a tough one. I could see Alan Graves being a guy that makes sense on their team as well. Howie Bears immediately, like Steinbach falling out of lottery all the way to 19. I mean, it could, man. Like, unfortunately, the thing about being drafted in a lottery is that there's only 14 spots, and there's about 18 to 19 dudes that could be available there. And then Dirty Dancers. I always forget Hannes is in this draft. Well, I'm sure Toronto is hoping that everybody does too, so he can go to that team. I think he would be fun there, actually. Who are the Sixers taking at 22? Man, if things break right for him, Koa Pete could be a lot of fun in Philly. I think that could be fun. Karim Lopez could be a lot of fun in Philly. It really just depends. Again, we still got a couple of guys that I'm staying up late with you guys, waiting to figure out who's staying in and who's not. And man, like there's a bunch of different ways that it could go. I could see if Malik Thomas is in, he could make a lot of sense coming off the bench there as a floor spacer. But the thing about Philadelphia guards is ultimately they end up in Oklahoma City. Just a joke. Yeah, I don't know. And then Bean says Christian Anderson to the Cavs. Maybe. I think that they do need some wing support for sure. Like if there's a team that's probably going to look entirely different next season than what they do now, it might be Cleveland. Josue Gonzalez says, last question. I'm pretty sure you have Darren on your board. I do. Would you still take him at 1 for my Wizards? And do you agree with the sentiment that it would be a less cleaner fit? This is a really good question. I've kind of resigned myself to already kind of conceding that AJ DeBonsa is probably going to be the pick based off of the way that Washington has picked over the past couple of seasons. Like it makes so much sense. It makes so much sense for them to take AJ. Um, if it's me, I'm still taking Darren and the less cleaner fit. I mean, maybe. I mean, he's not gigantic, but I think that with the current roster construction on Washington, like it could still make sense, right? And I understand that he said that he wants to be a point guard, and Trae Young is still on that team. By my knowledge, they haven't extended Trae Young, and by my knowledge, they didn't really invest a lot of assets to get Trae Young either, right? So if they traded multiple first round picks to get him, they would be obligated to commit to him moving forward. But they just gave up a couple of role players, man. Like they do not have to be married to Trae Young, and they could maybe get assets back for him more so than what they invested. But long term, like you could be looking at Darren Peterson and Trey Johnson backcourt with Kaishawn George and Alex Sarr, Bilal Coulibaly, Anthony Davis on the team. Like it could still be a clean fit. You know, the thing is now if you do get AJ, you do have to be invested in Trae Young because is AJ going to step in and be a offensive engine in year one? I think that's what you're working towards, right? But you now need a point guard to play alongside him. You know, Bub Carrington hasn't exactly been what I hoped that he would be. Trey Johnson is not a point guard, right? So now Trae Young has to be your point guard if you do have AJ. And that's someone that could be hunted on the defensive end. That's why the Hawks were willing to move off of him, right? So to your point, like I get the AJ stuff. I really, really do. But I wouldn't say that Darren Peterson is an ugly fit for that team by any means. Norman Rad, is there a world where Caleb Wilson ends up being the best player in the draft? Yes, I think so. I wouldn't rule it out. I wanted to have him as high on number 2 on my board. I just can't get there. I have him at 3 though. Not a popular opinion, but it's the opinion that I have. Yeah, there's some Zuby love going on in here. I think Zuby is pound my table second round guys. Yeah, like that's a guy who could end up going in the first round too, depending on what these last couple of prospects want to do within this class. So, you guys keep asking good questions and making awesome comments. I love you guys. The Spurs need more guys that'll kick a guy in the nuts to get him up out of there. That's funny. Thoughts on this is a good one. Brazil Popular. Love this question. Thoughts on Baba Miller and Trevon Brazil. I think that they have outstanding shots in the second round to be long-term prospects. Baba could be like a Jonathan Isaacs type of a player. He's legit 7 foot with good playmaking vision and can rebound and is a nasty defender. Like he could be a legit dude. And then Trevon Brazil, talked about him on the show last week with Jam. Fun prospect, very fun. I mean, of course, Wu Pig Sui, got to root for my Razorback guy, but 3-and-D forward, reliable 3-point shooter, reliable rebounder, fun transition option, and is a good weak side rim protection as well. So, yeah, I think that those are good names. Dirty Dancer in the chat said, which guy who declared for the draft goes highest in 27? I might need some clarification on that, Dirty Dancer, and it's probably not even you. It's probably me just being old and up at 11 o'clock at night. But are you asking who is going to be asked? All right, so you said which guy who declared for the draft goes highest in 2027. So you're asking if who declared for the draft this year goes highest next year? Oh, so you're saying like Mullins, Arenas, etc. I get it. Ooh, that's a fun question, man. I love Braylon Mullins. I had him as a top 10 guy coming in. I had him as a top 20 guy prior to him pulling out. I think that he's fun. I do like me some Elijah Arenas as well. If I had to pick a name, man, Shelton Henderson is kind of fun. The Miami guy. He's really got to shoot in order to realize himself, but he's a fun defender, athlete, rebounder. Man, falling for you for some of these questions that you guys ask. This is a fine day. Asked, has anyone talked about Copeland? He could be a steal for a team. I really liked him at Pitt. I thought he was the best player at the Portsmouth Invitational Tournament. You know, about a 6'5", 6'6", like second side creator who can defend. Uh, has some good passing vision, man. I was really blown away with his decision making. Um, he could be a steal. You know, I had Keith Smith on with my co-host Jam. Keith Smith from the front office show, the NBA front office show. He does a lot of cap sheet stuff. Very brilliant person. Works with Spa Track. A very talented person. If and no one knows who Keith Smith is, like look him up now. But he is a big Copeland guy, and he's an NBA snob. So anytime that he says that he likes a prospect, I typically pay those prospects a little bit more attention, right? Um, let's see here. Mr. Rush Creek add any word on Yesfu's decision? Man, I am waiting it out. I'm trying my best, guys. I'm definitely not going to be here for another hour, but it could end up he could end up coming down to the wire, man. Like they really don't have much time left. And again, if it's not posted on Twitter, that doesn't mean that it hasn't happened already. The requirement is they just need to inform the NBA. I got to ask, does Peterson shot out worry you at all? Seems like he's forced to shooting contested threes. I'm actually working on a then and now piece that's going to release not tomorrow, Thursday, but next Thursday. YSO 111 that talks about why I had Darren number one coming into the year and why I still do. So at noceilingsnba.com, you'll be able to read this. I'll share a little bit, but Kansas context was awful. Like outside of Darren, there was one other guy who shot over 35% from three this year, and that was Trey White, who isn't exactly like, you know, a high end number two option in college basketball, let's say. So Darren had to do more off ball stuff. Like that's what was asked of him this year at Kansas to be the 3-point shooter that he was. And he was outstanding on high volume. If you watch the high school stuff, and people might hate this, right? But if you watch the high school stuff with him, there's so much more on ball creation juice with him. Like not just solid, but really good passing vision. And I just think that this year was like, if this was a down year for him and he was still like a 20-point per game scorer on good volume and efficiency, I'm not worried personally about him, but I do get why some people might be a little bit more concerned here. Who do I think the Spurs should pick? And they have, what do they have? Like is it the 12th or the 13th pick there, Darren? A couple of good players that they could pick, to be honest with you. It looks like y'all need another big man. So like, if, could you imagine Ade Mara and Victor Wembanyama being on the team? Oh no, they do have the 20th pick. That's right. I'm thinking of something completely different. At the 20th pick, ooh, that's where it gets a little bit tricky. Again, especially with returning prospects. Man, let me pull up the old big board here while we're waiting for decisions to come across the line here so I can answer your question. Waiting for my sheets to load, excuse me there. You know, if Dalen Swain is at 20, I would be shocked, but if he's there, that would be a lot of fun to give you a little bit of size. Kareem Lopez would be a lot of fun. This is around the range where I would start entertaining Nate Ament to be on the team, and this would be at the Spurs. Like you could say this about any prospect, right? But I think that Nate Ament being on the Spurs, like if you don't have to worry about him being an on-ball creator. You don't worry about him doing more than what he's supposed to be good at, which is 3-point shooting and defend. So I think that would be a fantastic pick. I think you also asked, what do you think about Allen? If you're referring to Amari Allen, he already announced that he's going back to school. I had him 23 on my board, but he's going back. Quentin's going is top 18. His hometown is the Charlotte Hornets. Yeah, it very well could be. I would say JQ is going to be dependent upon the medicals though. Oh, Alan Graves, maybe that might be a fun fit too. Yeah, I forgot about Graves there. Graves would be fun for a lot of the same reasons. Like can space the floor, can defend a little bit, good rebounder. You don't have to. You don't have. Oh yeah, and that was the Allen you were referring to, not Amari Allen. My bad. My bad. Honest mistake. You'll have to forgive me. It's 11 o'clock. But all right, guys. I think that's all that I got in me. Unfortunately. Been trying to wait out the decisions from Malik Todd, and it's probably going to come the last time I tried to end the show is when we got some breaking news. So that was the Jeremy Fears Jr. decision. But oh, and Jefferson needs to be T-Wolf. Yeah, Joshua Jefferson is probably going to be a guy that's climbing up. He's benefiting a lot from the returns, right? So, man, I could have mentioned him a few other times. Guys, forgive me though. I'd appreciate it. Antoine's you guys are baiting me. You're still not sold on Minka. Still nope. I'm gonna have to see it. I'm gonna have to see it to believe it. Yeah, that's where I'm at, Antoine. Just not a fan of the film. Not a fan of the film. Not the intel stuff that's going around. But guys, we're gonna sign off here. Appreciate everyone for rolling through. This was a fun chat. I appreciate the turnout was more than I could have asked for because I legit like an hour and a half before the show was like, hey, I want to go live and do this. So thanks for everyone rolling through. Really appreciate the positive comments. Subscribe, hit the notifications. I'll be live again on Sunday evening with my co-host Jam Hines, and we're bringing on Tyler Metcalf. We're going to talk about a bunch of draft stuff too. So feel free to come through, hear those out. If you got questions, we'll be sure to cover a few. And again, thank you all so much for hanging out with me. Again, like, share, subscribe, rate, and review. NoCeilingsNBA.com. We have a bunch of stuff tomorrow, actually, on NoCeilingsNBA.com. I have a piece coming out called "Should You Be Worried?" It's part 2 of a 2-part series. Last week I covered the teams that are picking in the lottery. This week I'm covering the rest of the draft, and we're breaking down the history of the number of times that the NBA teams have picked where they're picking in 2026. So, for example, the Washington Wizards with the number 1 pick. Last week, I talked about their previous number 1 overall selections with Kwame Brown and with John Wall. I discussed those picks, how they happen, and a little bit of like what teams could do at those certain picks. And of course, for the fan bases, should you be worried, right? So my rest of the first round is going to be coming out next week. So NoCeilingsNBA.com, go over there if you want to read about literally any prospect that you want to know about. I promise that we're talking about them over there on the website. But we'll holler at you guys next time. This was a fun chat. I did not anticipate all the love, but it's much appreciated. And I'll sign off now. So for myself, for the rest of the No Ceilings team, for the basketball community at large, I've been Stephen Gillespie. You guys have been awesome. We'll catch up with y'all next time. Much love, y'all.